I think we're live now.
Okay, yes, we are.
We
Okay, cool.
are.
Hi, ladies. Happy Thursday.
Hi, hi, hi.
Hey.
Happy
How's
Thursday.
everybody's week going? How's your week going?
My week is going, it's great. It's going great. It's busy, but I always say it's always great when you're above ground. So yes.
Hey.
Yes, it
Yes,
is.
absolutely.
I have really red eyes because of the pollen, and I never thought I had allergies, but apparently I do because my eyes are like bloodshot. So I'm working through that right now. But other than that, it's been a fabulous week. We are so happy to be back with our good girlfriends, and
Yes.
our good guy friends are joining us this evening.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Chris. My name is
Hi,
Chris
Chris.
Johnson. Hallie Williams contacted me and asked me to join. So,
Oh, wonderful.
Yes. So we're so happy you're here. I'm Cara Dunstan, and Chris, you're my Turk brother. I remember you from college, actually. So
Oh
yeah.
gosh. Oh,
Yeah.
that was like that was a lot of hype, sir.
gotta be hyped for the Turks.
I mean, that was a lot of hype.
Well, let me tell you a story, right? So,
Oh,
um,
tell us a
so
story.
yeah, so my daughter goes to Virginia Tech, and Maryland played Virginia Tech in the Pinstripe Bowl back right after Christmas. So
Mhm.
the house was a little tense,
Divided.
right?
Tried it.
Until the Terps took it home. And so
Oh,
I'm
so
ready
that's
to
why
be in
you're
the house
hyped.
right now.
That's why you're hyped. I went to UVA, so that's
Oh
why.
my! When did you go to UVA?
81 to 86.
You remember Dave Johnson?
I know Dave Johnson very well. He's like a little brother to me. You
Well,
probably know my brother Reggie Clay.
he's my little brother. Dave is my literal
Literally.
brother.
Dave is literally your little brother.
Literally,
Literally
that's
my
his brother.
brother.
There's like a
Literally
Oh,
whole
my
you
bunch
brother.
know
of
Reggie
Johnsons.
then. You know Reggie, right?
Everybody knows Reggie.
I mean, well, I'm okay, but I'm his big sister.
Are you really?
Literally.
I
Oh,
am.
okay. All right.
Yeah. So like Dave has Lord. Look, we on the live, we on Facebook having a whole yeah.
Here
Oh
we
my
go.
gosh, I didn't know
We
That
that.
didn't
circle
even,
is
By the way, in
small.
the
That
living
circle
room,
is
this is
very
how it
small.
goes.
Small. Chris.
we
Hey
didn't
Chris,
even,
where do you live?
oh my God.
I live in Herndon, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
We haven't even gotten to our introduction. So welcome everybody to
Right.
Girlfriends Chat.
Right. We already into our living room conversation.
Right. So that's how we do it. So tonight we are excited because, as I mentioned, we're going to have our good guy friends join us, and the topic is franchising. And so we have some other special guests coming as well. But before we get to that, we're going to go ahead and introduce the other good girlfriends, and then we'll get back to our first special guest, Chris. So Regina, go ahead and introduce yourself formally.
Hi, I'm Regina. I'm branding myself with my job, right? Oh boy, I better be careful what I say. But
Right.
anyway, nevertheless, my name is Regina, and I'm glad to be here. And I love to have the time to be able to come and sit down with and listen to and be in the living room with. As you can see, I'm in the living room. So.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Jeanette, and I'm so grateful to be here also with my good girlfriends and now a guy friend. Just it's another fabulous, wonderful Thursday. I want to welcome any new viewers that we have, and welcome back our old good girlfriends and guy friends to our virtual living room. I usually say we don't have experts, that we're just good friends. We're gonna say friends tonight, kicking it in the living room, sharing information. And so I do think, and I've been saying this lately, if we have people that are walking the walk and talking the talk, then I do consider them to be experts, right? Because they have information, they're doing it, practical application. So I'm looking forward to tonight's topic. Welcome, Chris. We're so happy to have you. And we're gonna get to it.
Yeah. So one thing that we were saying was that what we've seen since the pandemic has been what they're calling the Great Resignation. So a lot of people who are currently employed, I should say, by companies are resigning to do other things with their lives, and they're seeing how important and short life is, so they're going after different things. So we thought this was a timely conversation because as people are figuring out what they're passionate about and what interests them and what avenues they may take to further their lives and their careers, that entrepreneurship and in the form of franchising is possibly a wonderful option for folks. And even if they are working, even if you are working for another organization, franchising can still be an option for you. So we're here tonight to learn all about franchising. So Hallie Williams will be joining us, and he was actually who I contacted first because I knew he was working with this. But since he's not here, we're going to start with you, Chris. Why don't you share your entrepreneurial franchising journey with us, and tell us more about yourself, and tell us what drove you to it as well. Tell us your whole story.
Sure. So my name is Chris Johnson out of Herndon, Virginia. So I had been working for a large IT sales organization and moved up through the organization. But as things move on, organizations, especially as you start getting older in your ages, and you've been around for an organization for a while, there's ways that companies are trying to push people out, trying to bring lower paid people in, right? And so I actually had a buyout from my company, and at the time I was kind of looking around, do I go back into another IT sales organization? At that time, I really wasn't finding anything that I was really gassed about. And a friend of mine had started their business through a franchise, and I was just asking a lot of questions, and it was just timely that a franchise broker approached me. And so went and checked out a franchise. I was looking at a bunch of different franchises, always wanted to have my own type of thing. And once I looked into it, I was like, this could be a good deal to try to make a move moving forward. So this was the end of 2019.
You can't give too much away.
Yeah, right. Yeah, this was the end of 2019, and I looked at this Fish Window Cleaning. It's the number one professional window cleaning company in the United States. Over 300 franchises across the U.S. There was a territory that was here in Fairfax, Virginia, that was up, and so I made a move on that, and I had a whole bunch of grand ideas about how to make this work, right? And then March 2020 hit, right? And so I'm right in the middle of the pandemic. A business that totally relies on storefronts. And we all know what happened in March 2020, all the way through 2021. Everybody was shut down, right? I had probably 80% of the businesses that I was supporting were all shut down. Boom, right? Luckily enough, I had 2 people that quit. I had 4 people working for me. I had 2 people that quit, and I had 2 people that I was employing, and we're able to kind of muddle our way through it. And on the back end of 2020, I actually was able to start making this thing grow again. Things started turning around a little bit more. We had another dip right at the beginning of 2021, but then ever since like the middle of 2021, it's been flying, right? I've been doing great. Grew the business. The year that the year of the pandemic, when I bought the business from the guy. So I had 5 months, maybe close to 6, that I really didn't have no business going on. And I actually beat what the guy that I bought it from, what he did during 2019 for a whole year, right? Now I didn't beat it by much, beat about like $5,000, but I beat it, right? The second year, 2021, I doubled what I did in 2020, right? And as Hallie knows, I just purchased another territory inside of Fairfax County. So essentially I cover all of Northern Virginia. So so now I have plans to really kind of grow and make this thing happen, right? So, you know, a lot of it really was, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, how'd you get into it? I was like, you know, trust me, I wasn't trying to clean window. That wasn't in my grand plan, right? But you just happen to have an opportunity that is presented for you. You try to take advantage of the opportunity, and it just kind of worked out pretty well for me. I'm a believer in franchises as much as I've gotten into it, just from the simple fact that if you join a franchise, and I know quite a few people that are poo-poo in franchises because you got to pay franchise fees and all this other stuff, right? But the benefit that you get out of it is you got infrastructure that's helping you to grow, right? If I was to go out here and try to develop my own window cleaning company, or even try to go with a tech company, I'm really on the streets banging hard, and I'm competing against companies that are fairly well established, right? When I come in as Fish Window Cleaning, there's so many people that are like, oh yeah, I remember, you know, using Fish when I was in South Carolina, or, you know, when I was in Illinois, or when I was whatever. Well, and I also have franchisees that are around me that they see the trucks rotting around in Maryland or even down in Fredericksburg, and they're like, oh, well, I was waiting to see who would show up around here, right? So so that works well. The corporate organization also is kicking business to me, right? So that works well too. And it's just a matter of taking all of the learnings, the skill sets that I got working in high tech of all those years, and putting that to use to grow this particular business, right? You know, I was in high tech sales. I don't do anything that's high tech now. Zero, right? I got one computer. Well, actually, I got two. I got a laptop and my computer, right? And most of the stuff that I do is all internet portal driven, right? It doesn't, matter of fact, just today I was trying to figure out something on Microsoft Office, and I hadn't used it in so long that I was like, damn, I used to be able to do this like that. And I had to go on the internet and try to find out what to do, right? So but the skills about leading people, what I liked out of corporate, and also what I did not like out of corporate, bringing that to the role. All of my sales experience, being able to take that and be able to bring that to this industry, especially when I'm looking at my peers. A lot of my peers are like, well, how are you doing that? And it's all the ideas that are coming from what I did in sales, right? Being able to work my compensation for my people based upon commission, that drives them to work based upon the more that they work, the more money they make. And I put bonus plans in place that if you achieve certain, go above certain levels, then you make more money. And matter of fact, I had one guy that came over from the original franchise, and he's like, man, I'm making a lot more money than I did with the other guy. And I'm like, hey, when you make money, I make money. So I don't have a problem paying you, right? So yeah, so that's kind of what my story is and how I got to here. I was actually speaking to one of my former employees just this afternoon, and she was like, well, do you think you'll ever come back? And I was like, I miss the people that I worked with. I miss the energy around the large corporate environment. I don't miss the corporate BS, and I don't miss that grind. Now I grind for doing what I'm doing, but it's not the same type of grind that I was doing before, right? So so I was like, no, I'm not coming back. I'm here. Matter of fact, what I want to do is get this to a point where it's fairly self-sustained, and then look for another franchise to get involved with.
That's
So,
awesome.
that's what I'm-
I
that's
have
what I'm
one
looking at.
quick, I got one quick question about Fish Window. Is that what it's called? Fish Window Company?
It's called
Um,
fish window cleaning. Yes.
Cleaning.
Okay, so is it commercial only or residential too?
I do 80% is what 80% of what I do is commercial focused, right? So that's actually what keeps me going throughout the hold on a second.
Yeah. He'll tell you when he go in residential neighborhoods, they're knocking on the truck to get windows clean.
Yeah.
Especially those who've been working in these offices in their
Right.
houses with these dirty windows. So.
Yeah, so 80% of what I do is commercial storefronts, right? So that's what keeps me going during the winter months, right? Which is another thing going back to where I got from what I was doing in high tech. Where I was at in high tech was we were in the process of switching over to direct sales to subscription sales, right? So for me to get commercial business, which actually goes either every week, every other week, or once a month, that's a subscription sale. That's important to me, right? Because I make more money, the company makes more money getting a $20 job that goes every month than a $500 house, right? Because a $500 house goes once a year if they come back, right? Whereas the $20 job, I make $500 off of that every month, or two $20 jobs, I make $500, right? And they're going to go on for years and years and years.
Right. All right. Well, we have two additional special guests. Actually, I'll introduce Hallie and then I'll let you introduce our other guests. How about that, Hallie?
Okay, that's fair enough.
Hallie is no stranger to our virtual living room. If we have any followers out there, they have seen Hallie visit with us quite often. He's my go-to if we have any questions for men, but tonight he was my go-to because he has now invested in his own. Is this a franchise right next door? Is
Oh, no. It's my own, working with entrepreneurs that are interested in franchising.
Okay, so he's going to tell us all about Right Next Door. So why don't you do that after you introduce our other guest?
Okay, fair enough. Yep. So I'll introduce Dwayne Graves. We call him affectionately known as Doc. When one of my frat brothers with Chris, and so the history of Doc. So Doc has Alpha Graphics, and he'll give a little bit more history on Alpha Graphics. It's a print company that he owns. But Doc and I, we long relationship, and so my dad passed about 5 years ago. I actually went to Doc to do the programming, to put the programming together. Then while we were there talking, he started telling me how he got into franchising, and he started business Alpha Graphics. And it's funny how that one conversation we had, how it just sat in my spirit for a while to years later, for me creating Right Next Door. And so I'll let Doc share out his history, his background, and then I'll come back and give you a little bit more context on Right Next Door. Take it away, Doc. You're still on mute.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Greetings, everyone. My name is Dwayne Graves, affectionately known as Doc. But anyway, so I have a degree from the University of Maryland, Advertising Design. Okay. So after graduation, I went into the design field for about 15 years. And, I got to art director, manager of a graphic shop. And that was kind of at the top, right? And then I got exposed to sales, and then I got into sales of imaging equipment and workflow solutions to the federal government. And I did that for 20 years. Well, I'm sure no one is as old as I am, but at some point in your life, you're going to get hit with that senioritis where you're a seasoned, welcome employee, but they feel that they can get two for the price of one. So, forced out, resigned, whatever, but I left. And then my wife and I, she had a 27 year career in pharmaceutical sales, and she got hit with the same thing, you know. So she was looking around and investigating franchises and businesses to open while I was trying to look for a job. And then she pitched the idea to me, and we went out to Utah, where Alpha Graphics was headquartered, but now they moved to Colorado. And we sat down and we listened to the spiel, and got really excited because we were buying an existing shop. So it was a ready-made market pool where people knew we were there, business was coming in, and all we had to do was come in and improve the culture, the workflow, and so 8 years. Of course, we've had ups and downs. Um, it's rewarding. You know, I wake up every morning. I ask the people, I like, am I living the American dream or the American nightmare? And he says, when you wake up, it is the nightmare, because now you're grinding. As Chris would say, you're always on the grind. But when you go to bed at night, you know, you're grinding for yourself, right? You're putting forth the effort, and you're going to reap the benefits from it.
Right.
Chris was dead on about the franchise branding. So Alpha Graphics is nationwide. There's 280 business centers throughout the country, and mostly in major metropolitan areas. Okay, they have some on outliers, but most of them are in major metropolitan areas. And our sale is to business. You know, we're not the neighborhood print shop where you go get your flyers for your birthday party and, you know, your kids' wedding invitation. We could do that, but that's not what drives our business. Our business is like where we're located in downtown DC, where that's my territory, downtown DC, where 90% of my business comes from nonprofits and associations. So we produce marketing materials, conference materials, branding, meeting materials. Those are the types of things that we do on an everyday basis. So in 2020, when pandemic hit, you can imagine what happened to us. We got crushed. We went from $1 million in sales down to 150,000, and it was devastating. We capitalized on the PPP loans and all of the small business opportunities that were available. And recently we just moved because we couldn't afford the rents in downtown. Downtown DC rents were just way too expensive. So we moved out to Lanham. But I was able to keep the downtown territory. So if you go to the website, it says Alpha Graphics at 1325 G Street. But our production facility is actually at 4384 Lotsford Vista Road in Lanham, Maryland. And I think that the franchise realizes that if I leave downtown and move the address and the branding to Lanham, that they'll lose the downtown territory. So they're keeping their footprint alive, and that's key for franchises. And that's why it's very important not to do a startup, because you'll burn through money, time, and effort. And at the end of the day, I don't know if you will have enough to show for your efforts. One of the things I would say is, like with Chris's job business, there's a need for commercial companies not to have a on-staff person to go out and wash their windows. Okay, So when they need their windows cleaned, they go out, they get a window cleaning service, boom, they're out. And printing is a lot different. People don't need printing every day. People need printing when they need it. And the key for me is marketing to people that will at some point in the next year, year and a half, 2 years maybe, they would need a printer. You know, they may be putting on an event, they may be hosting a meeting, they may be, you know, doing something, right? They may be going out to a trade show, and I have to be on their lips, on their tongue, on the tip of their tongue when that event comes up, because then it's, oh, let me call Alpha Graphics and see if they can help. So, you know, it's a grind. And one thing I would say, Chris was in sales, I was in sales. That's one of the major components in owning a franchise, because now you got to understand your market. Okay, you got to understand your high points, your low points, your busy and slow seasons, and what drives your market. Okay, so I have a buddy who, you know, he has a trash removal company, right? So he has a fleet of 20 trucks, you know. And I said, you have a recession proof business. He says, in a way I do, in a way I don't, because I don't get paid on a regular basis when there's a recession. They keep asking to pick up the trash, but then they always come back around with cutting it back, you know, doing things. So there's always a challenge to your business, no matter what it is. I was fortunate that I understood the graphic industry because I was a graphic designer for 15 years. But then I also understood the sales and the business side because I sold for 20 years. And when we looked at what we should get, my wife said, well, we should be getting a print shop. I'm like, really? Why? She said, you have the background. Okay. You have the background. We have an opportunity. This is a layup. And I said, well, printing is on the downslope. Yeah, but digital printing is holding its own, if not growing. And I had to agree with it. So we do short run full color, and we're not competing with the big. We're not going to compete with the big printers that print your throwaway mail. You know, your everyday mailbox. You know, we're not competing with those. They do millions of pieces a month. We're competing with that person that wants full color, but they don't want to pay that full color price on an offset, and they're not trying to run, 300, 400,000 pieces. They only want 500. So that's our niche market. And we struggle right now because our biggest problem is supply chain. All the vendors that supply me are having problems getting materials to create the materials that I need. So paper is at a very, very high premium. And, we get on a paper alert every Monday morning to see what's available. And if you sneeze, it's gone. Our paper rep says, okay, we got all this type of paper available at Monday at 8:30. At 9 o'clock, that shipment is almost gone, if not spoken for. So these are the challenges of owning your business. Now, we were blessed that we had some resources that we could use to start off. And I would say,
did we lose him? he was getting to the money part. That's what people want to hear.
Right.
Well, I guess I'll pick it up. Doc, you still there? I'll pick it up from here for them then. But what you heard from both of them, exactly what I wanted to share out is that that's the market that I decided to go into. I mean, give you a little background on myself. I grew up in franchising, like my dad, my godfather, you know, with insurance companies, franchising. My stepdad went into franchising with the Photoshop. So I've been around franchising that space. So I know the challenges. And so I'll say, it's been probably like 20 years ago, going to franchise expos here in DC. I was always interested in, getting their franchising, but I never pulled the trigger on anything. And so I went back I did engineering. That's what Carr and I know each other. You guys know the story. I did engineering at the University of Maryland. Then I went back to business school. And so while in business school at Howard, we were encouraged to work in the Small Business Development Center, assisting with small business consulting. And so that's what I've been doing off and on, along with my corporate job the last 20 years, doing small business intern. Once again, Carr Resources helped me out. I got an intern at American Express in the small business the group up in New York, World Financial Center, back in the early 2000s. So that small business development experience helped out also. So, but the last year I built out Right Next Door. It's a franchise brokering firm, and it's to help out what Christian said. Mid-career professionals or aspiring entrepreneurs who wants to get into franchising. That's what I do, as well as business owners who are in franchising who want to expand to another brand. And so that's what I do. I help them out in the whole life cycle. I sit down and work with them as far as profiling, seeing what their investment profile is, how much they want to invest, exploring business opportunities, not because of what you just heard what Doc said. And with Chris, a lot of people think because they work professionally in one domain that they want to pursue a franchise in that domain. And I always say, hold up, let's explore other opportunities. You have core skills and capabilities from corporate America that can be transferable. And the hardest part is changing that mindset, because a lot of people have a corporate mindset. So pivot that corporate mindset to a more entrepreneurial mindset. So that's really the challenge most times, because of how you're trained to think in corporate is projecting, future, what we're going to do. Whereas entrepreneur, you got to think backwards. Hey, this is what we're doing. How do I get my customers on board? How can I get my employees on board? And how can I maintain that vision for the company? So that's always a nice challenge. And then the part where Doc was leaving off at is that I assist them with finding funding. Usually when people think of starting a business, they automatically think I need to get a line of credit on my house or using debt equity. But there's so many other financial vehicles available, such as, asset equity, such as leveraging your 401k, your savings that you have. You can use that as a vehicle, borrow against yourself, creating your own S Corp company, and then giving yourself 100% equity in that company. Use that as financing. So equity financing, as opposed to just always thinking debt financing. So I work with clients in all those different areas. I cover 40 plus different industries, big brands such as like Meineke, Amco, restaurants, Rita Ice, the 1-800 Junk. I'm all in all different industrial, retail, home services, which is, as Chris said, that's really been a big industry with the pandemic, because we're staying in our houses more. So it's been, and like I said, I'm open to any questions. I just wanted to share that out there and see what people are saying in the chat.
I have some questions. So if I wanted to, if I said, oh, I'm interested in a franchise, would I come to you? And do you do like an evaluation, or how does that work? Like, what are the steps if I'm interested? What would our first meeting look like? Would you learn more about me, and then you have like an assessment, or how's that work?
Yep. So that's what I do. I sit in a place, like I said, with the economy the way it is, with people are leaving corporate, especially with the Great Recession. What I do is, that's what I do. I sit in between aspiring entrepreneurs, business owners, and the franchisors. And so what I usually do, my client engagement, what I do is we do what I call profiling. It's a 3-step to profiling. I first want to know your personal, where you are and what stage in your life, and what are you interested in? And then also your professional, what's some of the experiences that you had, and a lot of people start off, I don't start with what you did post-college. I want to know prior to, what are some things that, because most teenagers have, whether we know it or not, probably worked in franchise in some capacity. So they have some context of what a franchise is, although people automatically think restaurants, but there are other franchise vehicles besides restaurants. And then next, step 2 is we start looking at a financial profile. I'll see how much you want to invest, what investment threshold you're interested in. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we'll explore different financial vehicles. Whether you want to do debt, equity financing or debt financing, I'll present those options to you. There are two main things where you see people always say about franchise. They see the initial franchise fee, and what Chris mentioned about those management fees, those ongoing costs. But the benefit of franchising is you're pretty much buying a business plan and you're getting that wraparound support. And so the third piece that I work with them on is that's the business profile. And to understand, what do you want to focus on, a B2B, a business to business type of model, or a B2C where you're actually working with consumers? Do you want to have a storefront, or do you want to do a work from home? And so we explore all those options. We'll go through what I call my franchise discovery process. And then based on the intel that we share, I'll then do assessment and I'll present you different options, 5 to 7 options. And then you and I will go through that whole discovery process and iterate till we find 3 or 4 brands that you're interested in. And then I will then schedule appointments with different franchisors for you to meet so we can do more of the additional validations.
I
So
don't
that's how
know.
that process works. Yep, go ahead.
I think Doc is back, but real quick while he's getting himself back on. So
Okay.
I don't know if you can answer this, but what's the range in so not to scare people off from franchising, what would be the least amount generally that you would need to spend to see
Yeah.
if
So,
that
Doc, I think we get feedback on somebody's call.
Yeah,
So-
Doc, it might be you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So the first, which you see usually if you go to an expo or if you're reading one of the publications, you always see the initial franchising fee. So that's usually what people think of when they say franchise, like, what can I get for 25,000 or less than 25,000? So that's one initial metric you see, and then you'll see how much it costs to invest. And the difference between, as Chris mentioned, as you being a business owner, starting your own shop versus franchising, they want you to think of those 36 months. How much financing you'll need to be sustainable over those 36 months. And that's the range you always see. You hear terms such as how liquid are you? Do you have 75,000 to 150,000 available? And then depending on the territory that you're in, like Doc just mentioned, he's in metropolitan DC. So of course this is going to require more of businesses to sustain themselves versus if you're in like Alabama or somewhere in the South. So those ranges vary. But when you do that, the third piece, which I mentioned, when you work with the actual franchise, you do what's called a validation process. That's when you get an opportunity to talk to other franchisees, such as Chris, so you can get more apples to apples comparison. If you're in a metropolitan DC area, you compare with New York or Philadelphia versus a franchisee that's in another area somewhere else in the country. So did that help?
Yeah, I got you. So
Okay.
those fees, so other than the franchising fee, the other fees are really to help you sustain the business while you're getting up off the ground. So
There
that's
you
the
go.
point, because I always thought that was just going to the franchise company, but that's not really what that's for. It's really to help sustain your business.
Exactly. And the purpose for those initial franchising fee is to give you access to the licensing, the branding, the support training, the SOP, the standard operating procedures, because you're buying a business plan. And so you really need to educate yourself on that business plan. Because just like Fish or Alpha Graphics or any restaurant, whether you're in New York or Philly, you have a certain level of expectation when you pull into the property. You know what I mean? And so there's a certain baseline that they all have to follow. So that's why those initial franchising fees are so important.
So I have a question and it's probably for Chris, because window cleaning, as you said, window cleaning, that wasn't in your purview of what you knew how to do. I don't know if you cleaned your mother's windows when you were younger or whatever. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I'm just
Only when I was in trouble.
when you were in trouble. But and sometimes we think about that. It's I can't open a Rita's franchise because I don't know about being a restaurateur or whatever that may be. So a lot of times, and Chris and Haley, you probably can speak to this, but of understanding, okay, it's not necessarily, oh, well, I should do that franchise because that's something that I know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a matter of how did you, and so Chris, mainly probably you and Haley, you probably can, come on this. Why did you choose the window cleaning?
So, you're absolutely right. It's not necessarily looking at window cleaning, right? So when I was looking for at the franchise opportunities I was looking at, right? I was looking at Fish, which was window cleaning. I also looked at another one that was disaster recovery, so like when have fire, floods, all of that type of stuff, right? And there was another one too that I was looking at as well. One of the things when you're going through the discovery process is to try to understand how much the franchisor is going to be able to train you in what you need to do. Okay. When I did the investigation, Fish did a very good job training me on what was involved with window cleaning. And it wasn't me going out and actually cleaning a window. It was really more of what's involved to make that business successful. Business being successful, how do you hire good people? Well, I've been hiring people for years. How do you grow the business? How do you go out and get customers? I was doing that for years. How do you run a business, right? I was doing that for years. I wasn't necessarily running the company that I was working with, but I ran several divisions of the company, right? So it's all those transferable skills, right? And so now what you're doing is you're running the business. I don't clean windows. There were days where I had to go clean windows because I didn't have staff, and that was early on. But I don't clean windows, and I haven't cleaned windows for about well over a year, and I've only been in this for 2. Okay, it's a matter of how do you get to a position where you are running the business, bringing your business knowledge that you've had in the past, and then maybe tweaking some skills that maybe you've never used before to run the business. And that's where that franchisor helps you out. When you're paying that fee back to the franchisor, they send me business. They have a whole support staff that helps me out. They have a support staff that helps me train my people. They have a support staff that helps me identify what equipment do I need to get, right? They have a support staff to kind of help me understand how do I go get my accounts receivables back, right? So a lot of people, when they look at it, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you got to pay all this money for franchise to the franchisor for the franchise fee." But how much is that going to? If you were starting your own business, you would be spending 4 or 5 times that, and not getting the level of customers and support back, right? So your original question was, it's not about what and when I was looking at all the franchise opportunities, I wasn't looking at them for what the franchise did. I was looking at it from the standpoint of the business is here. I wanted to go here. What do I have skill wise to be able to do it? What is the franchisor going to bring to help me to do it? And how do I get there? Because I'm not trying to do the work. Does that make sense?
That's good. That was good.
Yeah.
I have a question, maybe Hallie, you might know this. Do most people, this sounds like a lot of work. But it's your work, it's your business. And so of course it's good work, but do most people do this full time without having another, like not working another job, or most people, or some people doing both, like working in
Which we talking about as far as franchising or what I do?
Franchising. Like
Okay.
I'm just wondering, like the timing for purchasing a franchise. Is it while you're working? Or...
So there's a lot of different models. It goes back to different business models. There are some where you can work part-time. There's different tiers too. There's some franchise, as Chris shared, there's some where you actually a manager. You can call it managing your franchise. And then there are some where you can be like a master franchise, where you can actually recruit others to purchase a franchise. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of different, and like I said, there's B2B models. There's some franchise that are like brokers where you work part-time when you want to work, such as loan brokers, especially now with the aging population, assisted living brokers, where you're working with families to identify a place for assisted living homes for their family members. So there's a lot of different types of franchise that are available that you can do part-time. One thing I wanted to share out, and one thing I do with my clients, because that's what people always wonder, like, how do I know which franchise is right for me? I say, let's reverse it. Let's think about your community. What is the needs in your community? What are the problems? What are the opportunities? What are the needs? And think of it that way. Because I know I live in Prince George's County, and people always complain about lack of resources, lack of places to eat, place to dine. And what we need to do is shift that paradigm. Because what needs to happen is, and Chris will tell you that franchises are always talking about the fit. And so what we need to do is find entrepreneurs in our communities, and those entrepreneurs need to assist with pulling businesses into those communities, because the headquarters are only going to invest when they know that their clients, potential customers in those communities that will service those businesses. And so entrepreneurs in those communities know their communities, so they should be the ones that should be pulling those brands to their communities.
So how does one get set up with you, Hallie, to go through this process of matching, finding up the appropriate franchise, or at least exploring that option?
Yeah. So right next door.biz, the top right corner, it says contact me. And so they contact me. And the beauty of my services are offered free. I get paid by the brands once you sign the franchise agreement. So, but in order to get you there, there's a front end client engagement process that we need to prepare you. And just to put more context on it, especially over the last 3 to 5 years, a lot of private equity firms have come into the franchising industry. And so the industry has changed a lot. It was traditionally thought of as a sales industry. So when you have these private equity firms who are now in the industry, because we're all in corporate, we understand with the Lean Six Sigma, Agile, they've streamlined a lot of the processes, and they decided to outsource a lot of non-key business areas. And one was sales. And so what they decided to do is use the same model that we have in insurance and in housing, where you have brokers. And so that's where my business, like franchise brokers, come in, working with potential clients to help them prepare so that when they are ready to go to the franchise for, to move forward with acquisition, then it's a more streamlined process. And so that's what has changed a lot in the franchise industry. And as a result, as Chris said, that process can be expedited. If you have your financing in order, you have an ideal territory you want to work in. I mean, you're talking about six weeks, you could be up and running, actually. And if you have a storefront, a longer lead time, you have to find a location or have a build out. But the actual, once you decided that you want to purchase a franchise through the training, the completing the validation, that can happen in 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, I did mine.
Contact me through rightnextdoor.biz. And then, and like I said, if you have any questions, feel free. I'm available.
Chris, you did yours in 4 weeks?
4 weeks.
Wow.
Wow.
I did mine in 4 weeks. I mean, once I found fish, and I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. From my discovery day to the day that I opened was in 4 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, what I will say is I purchased an existing territory,
Yeah.
right? So that territory was already in play. It was operational. There were employees that with that company, but the process to go through for me was 4 weeks, and it just happened to be that that's the way it was. So
Yeah. I mean, you got the top tier strategy consultants the private equity firms are bringing in to help streamline those processes. I mean, and that's what's happening now. They're
Right.
outsourcing, and Chris would tell you, both would tell you, is that especially mid-level professionals do very well in franchising because you understand how to move the needle. You understand metrics. You know what to measure. You know what leading indicators are. You know what lagging indicators are. You know how to work cross-functionally. You know especially at our age, you know your core competency. You know what you can do. You know what you will do. And if you're not going to do it, outsource it. Why are you like strength finders? Focus on your strengths. Pay someone else to do that so you can focus on your core capabilities, because in the end, it's the bottom line. You want to take care of your family, you want to go enjoy vacation with minimal stress. So.
The other thing I'll throw on that too, and it just on that core competencies, right? You got to look at it from the standpoint you're running a business, right?
Yes.
So when you outsource those things that you're not great on, that's a business write-off. Okay. So why would I do something that's going to take me all day to do versus I can get somebody to do that in an hour? Right. Now I may pay more for that, but that's a business write-off because that's a contractor for me. And so that's part of thinking about this as a business, as opposed to being, was it penny wise, pound foolish, right? It's a business. There's things that you're doing to run your business.
Right.
I'm the outsourcing queen.
Yeah, and we've all been trained in Lean Six Sigma, so we can minimize the defects when we outsource.
So I will give a little caveat to outsource, especially if you are a franchise that is a service generated, printing is service generated, and the competition. So, we break our pricing down per page, right? So you have to be careful on the amount of outsourcing that you do. Because what happens is this: I may sell a booklet job for $1,000, right? But I have to go get a company that does the binding of the booklet because he has a big high-powered machine that could do it in a fraction of the time that I would do it. Okay, and that's you have to factor that into your pricing model. Mm-hmm. But you have to be careful because your franchise costs, what you have to pay to the franchisor, is your total revenue.
True.
Okay, so you'll sell that job for $1,000, but 300 of it is off to a sublet. We call sublet, but a offshore, right? So you're reducing your margins. Okay, your operating margins when you outsource. If you can do most of your work in-house, then that's where you should rely on. I can't say yay or nay, but in my job, I have to get a bindery guy. I have to have a wide format guy. I have to have a sales guy and a front desk guy, right? Person. But I try to limit as much as possible outsourcing because it just takes away from my margins. So you have to learn that. It took me 8 years to learn that. I was outsourcing everything in the beginning, but then I was like, wait a minute, I don't have the margins that I'm accustomed to, but I'm being charged the full percentage of the franchise fee. Every month there's a franchise fee, right. And that fee gets that you multiply by the total sale. It doesn't matter how much it costs you to produce that product. They just look at the total sale. So you have to be careful on outsourcing a lot. Okay. It's just something to be mindful of.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. And I don't outsource my core functionality, but what I do outsource, like I have a lot of equipment that I have, and every once in a while I need to get that equipment repaired or tuned up. And clearly I could do it, but I will send that out to get fixed up, because now instead of it being me taking a day or two to fix it, I can get it done in an hour. And then that other 8 hours, I can be out there making money.
Driving business.
Right.
Right.
So Doc's point is a fair point, right? You don't want to outsource your core functionality but other things that you can outsource, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
I have a question. So if we have viewers from all over the country, maybe even outside of this country, and are you available, Hallie, for
Yeah.
people outside of Maryland, or are you in a territory?
Yeah. So the beauty of what I did, I am a part of a broker network, IFPG, International Franchise Professional Group. As a certified franchise consultant, I am available to work in all 50 states, and we even have international brands, so I can work with all. I need to update my license in New York and Washington. That'll be done over the next 60 days, but I am available to work with aspiring entrepreneurs and business owners in all 50 states.
So I think this is outstanding because you take like the guesswork right out of doing this, and I hope that we have many aspiring entrepreneurs to watch this particular show, because I know it's piqued my interest. You know, when we started the show, Cara started it off by talking about the, COVID and this time they're calling it the Great Resignation, with people resigning from jobs. But I like to think of it as a great reimagining, because I think that during the time that we were home, shut down, a lot of people began to rethink what life could be. Became more creative. We had to all sit down for a minute and think, are we really happy in the roles that we're serving, and how could we do more? And entrepreneurship, I think, is for everyone, really, I think is the way to go. At some point, we all come to a point where we are like, if we're going to grind, we should be, grinding for ourselves and for our family. And so the fact that there is this, that you guys have shared your experiences, but Hallie, that you have this business that really kind of holds your hand through the process, is outstanding. I think wonderful.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
real
If I
quick.
can throw one other point to the point that you brought up there, Jeanette, right? So many times, I know myself, when I go to like the fish conventions, and when I was actually looking at other different franchise opportunities, there's not too many of us African Americans that are out there franchising, right? And I think it's an excellent opportunity for us to be able to start businesses with the help and be able to be successful as we're trying to be entrepreneurs, right?
Mhm.
And so, I'd love to see more African Americans jump into franchising, because it's a great opportunity as opposed to going and trying to grind it out on your own. And, there's a statistic, I don't know, Callie, you may have it, like, there's a high percentage of businesses that fail in the first 7 years because they're just not set up to go and do the work and understand the work, right? When you have a franchisor that helps you get there, your success level goes up higher. And we as African Americans probably should be taking advantage of that. I'd love to be in walk into a franchise meeting and see a large percentage of African Americans driving. And most of my friends that are in franchises say the same thing. They walk in there and there's very few African Americans there.
That's
And
true. We're definitely underrepresented. I mean, and so we all are part of the Black Franchise Leadership Council. And so that's an organization under the International Franchise Association. And that's their whole purpose, to try to get more African Americans in franchising. Because the opportunities, it's pretty much, as we share, it's pretty much a no-brainer as far as the assistance and support that's offered. And traditionally, we think of entrepreneurs as maverick, the outliers. But it's a learned skill. It's something that you can be taught, something that you can learn. And as Doc shared, through learning, being in the trenches, you refine your model. You find out how to minimize your costs and maximize your revenue. I'm actually finished. I just finished up today, entrepreneurial mindset training. And the key thing I had to, the paradigm shift I had to realize is that we've been exposed to entrepreneurs all our lives. They just went by different names. Hustler, side hustle, somebody trying to get it, trying to make money, movers and shakers. those are all different stages of entrepreneurship. You know what I mean? Had they had more training and more refined and more structure, they could have been more profitable. And it's pivoting from that solo hustler mentality to a CEO type of mindset, and understanding that you want to grow your business and make it self-sustainable. So I mean, I think the momentum is there. I think this pandemic really sat us all down, and especially with the young generation, my daughter and my son and their peers, they call themselves creatives. I mean, they have their corporate job and they all are doing things on the side. It's just a matter of providing them that structure, and teaching them how to scale it and create systems in place so it can be sustainable.
I love that. Yeah. Well, this has been phenomenal. And the premise of Good Girlfriends is to invite people into our virtual. Did you lose me?
No,
It's here.
Oh, okay.
You're there.
To invite people into our virtual living room. And so I know that we have 3 men on tonight, but I am encouraging women also to look into franchising as well. I don't know if there's statistics on that, so I don't know how many women have franchises, but I don't want anyone by any means to think that we are looking for the husbands or the men to lead in this effort. We want to be right in there in the franchise business with you and bring our skills and sales and marketing abilities right along with you fellas. So we thank you all so much. I don't know, anybody else have more questions before we go?
Any in the chat?
No, we don't have any in the chat, but we definitely had some, quite a few viewers. So
Okay, good stuff. Good stuff.
yes, and I see, Hallie, you've put all of your contact information in here, so I know they can reach you. And Chris and Dwayne, if you all would like for Hallie to put your contact information in,
Sure.
we have a lot of viewers, so and always an opportunity
Absolutely.
for some business as well.
Go plug, fellas. Fish
Yeah.
cleaning in Northern Virginia. Alpha.
Yeah. So, Hallie,
So
if you want to share their contact information in our chat, that would be great. That way it'll be there.
Alpha
We got
Graphics.
hours later. So,
This is their work right behind me.
wow, that's awesome. See,
Yeah.
I love how that works.
Yeah.
So,
One of the key things about what we do is that we do put images on paper and on products and walls and things, but we also do a lot of design work. So you need your business cards, and one of the things I always said that your first impression is the lasting impression. It's just like a business suit. So if your business card is tight, if your letterhead, if all your collateral material is tight, then you're going to be believed and looked at as a viable business to engage in. So keep us in mind. If you need something designed, we can take care of that also.
yeah, that's awesome. I know my own husband, who is an entrepreneur, was just recently talking about he wanted to get one of those pull-up banners for when he goes to some of his events. So I'll be sure to share your contact information with him, Dwayne.
Sure.
Reach out. So yeah, well, thank you all so much for joining us. I'm going to take us off live, but don't get off of the Zoom yet, because we like to thank you after the show personally. So
And her dad is a new, so Carl Gruber around new entrepreneurs too. So
Like
that.
Oh Lord, is it that kind of party?
yeah, and he's actually an entrepreneur as well.
That's what Newts do.
Yeah, he's an entrepreneur.
That's what
He
Newts
has
do.
his own business. So yes, you're right, Hallie. I didn't even think about that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Who, Jeanette? Who is this?
My father.
Oh, your father, yes.
Yeah.
Right, I didn't even think until Hallie just said that. I didn't even think about the
I
fact
know.
that
And her husband, an entrepreneur, so Carl surrounded by entrepreneurs.
yeah, didn't even think about
Surrounded
it.
by them.
Yeah. So thank you all, and we'll be back
Thank you guys.
in a couple of weeks
Thank you.
for another.
Thank you, everybody.
Friends, in a few weeks. We're not sure the date yet, but our next episode is probably going to be around gardening and feeding ourselves with our own food. So we'll be back. We'll share the date and time for that, but we'll see everyone very soon. Until then, we hope that we've been a blessing, and we hope that you'll be blessed. So stay tuned. Thank you. Have a great weekend.